Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. I think we just had a very exciting event, but be grateful if you'd
It works now? Okay. Dear colleagues, it's my great pleasure to start this Marrakech Partnership Action event. And I would say that we had a long journey together with the Marrakech Partnership. And I really would like, first of all, to say big thanks to all the colleagues and to the Secretariat of Marrakech Partnership and the whole group for the very fruitful discussions during actually at least since June, so we were like communicating and discussing and developing the ideas. Also to say that I think this Marrakech Partnership event on the Investible NDCs, so Subnational Action, is very timely because many of us have seen so many different workshops, negotiations, discussions, bilateral meetings on the NDCs, and also discussing about the subnational actors' engagement into the NDCs which are to be presented now, the NDC 3.0, and also the discussion on the NDC 4.0. And we know all, and again, we had lots of discussions that how important the subnational action is for the transition towards achieving the Paris Agreement goals. And we, again, would like to stress with this event the importance for the localization of the national determined contributions and NDCs. This session will demonstrate quite many of the successful practical examples of actions where we're actually transitioning, moving towards this localization of NDCs. We just had actually today at 11 a.m. a ministerial meeting, a roundtable on buildings. And then we had also another one on resilience where we discussed how national governments and local governments interact and work towards achieving the global goals and also making sure that subnational actors are engaged in this work. It's really great news that the CHAMP search, other initiatives are really growing and becoming stronger and becoming really getting the global coverage. So we're really looking forward for today's discussion about what is the progress and really have a deliberation, what we can do together to make it even more effective and how to scale up. So I'm really excited about this discussion today. And with that, it's my great pleasure to invite here our next speakers. First of all, dear Razan Khalifa Al Mubarak, the high-level climate champion for the COP28. I would like to invite you here. Also, Hailey Campbell, who is our youth delegate and co-executive director of Care About Climate. And Diana Urje-Bortsats, who is vice chair of the IPCC and the director at the Center for Climate Change and Sustainable Energy Policy at the Central European University. She's also chair of the steering committee for the IPCC report on cities and climate. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, dear colleagues. It's really a pleasure to have you all. It's a dream team to have here. First of all, thank you so much, Razan, for your leadership. And it's my pleasure to give you floor for the welcoming remarks, for the keynotes.
So I was just on a panel with you wonderful ladies. And so it's wonderful to be in great company. And it's wonderful to see so many friends and so many actors and so many initiators of this incredible movement that is embodied in at the subnational level. So it is a great honor to be with you here today, engaging with friends, with partners, with the Marrakech Partnership and leaders across the human settlement system, a system that really spans the full breadth and depth of our political, of our social, and our economic sectors, from biodiversity to buildings, from transport to energy, from governance to equality. This system is the embodiment of our aspiration, our health, our future, and our identity. But this system is threatened by climate. The climate crisis threatens the sustainability and resilience of our human settlements, and the scale of this challenge is only growing. The urban population is expected to grow by 2.5 billion by 2050, with most of this growth occurring in regions most vulnerable to climate impacts. And nearly a quarter of the world's urban population lives in slums or informal settlements. So we must respond to these challenges, and we must respond to those opportunities. And sub-regional actors are leading this charge. They are demonstrating that ambitious and decisive climate action is not only possible, but it is profitable and popular. And let me give you a few examples. And Greg, I'm not just saying that because you're in the room, but Vancouver, Helsinki, and California have all introduced carbon limits on new buildings. Earlier this year, C40 reported that 75% of its cities are reducing per capita emissions faster than their national governments. And this is incredibly important, particularly in the context of a changing geopolitical context. Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and New York City, which are part of the Race to Zero campaign, have enacted bans on fossil fuel gas in new buildings, setting powerful precedents for sustainable urban development. Businesses have followed suit. Last year at COP28, I witnessed top leaders from the development sector in the UAE come together for the first time to share their blueprint for decarbonizing the built environment. And today, I was thrilled to learn that a cohort of business leaders here in Baku have launched their own blueprint, paving the road for stronger action. So the leadership is certainly there. And this leadership is spurring confidence amongst national governments, making sure that they take the ambition that is required that will in turn spur Investible NDCs. And we see this through several global powerful initiatives, including the Coalition for High Ambition Multilevel Partnership for Climate Action, CHAMP, which is now endorsed by 74 countries. As governments prepare their next revisions of NDCs and national adaptation plans, we have a window of opportunity to amplify these leadership stories from businesses, from cities, and industry. I now hand over to all of you, our leading network of partners working within the Marrakech Partnership and beyond, to speak not only about what is being done, but also what can be accelerated, what can be scaled, and what can be replicated. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Razan, for this inspiring remarks and framing this discussion. And I would like to give now floor to Hayley Campbell, from also as representative of the youth, because this will be you who will be soon making the decisions. So we really would like to hear your perspective as well.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to be here on behalf of so many young people who are going to be the young people making decisions in the future of our cities, and for many young people today as part of a network of advisory councils and other groups in cities. Much like the multilateral system that we live in today, cities were also built for a very different time, a time when the future seemed endless, the idea of sustainability being an afterthought. Our streets, buildings, and systems were designed with yesterday's problems in mind. But today, we're called to imagine a new future, one where urban spaces not only survive in harmony, but with the planet. By 2050, at least 2 out of every 3 people are expected to live in urban areas. 70% of these people are expected to be young people and children. That means out of those 2 of 3 people, 70% of them are going to be living and going to school in these communities, figuring out how to navigate walkable pathways, figuring out how to engage in their communities. 70%. Young people today are more connected to the reality of climate change than any generation before them. We see the floods, we see the droughts, and we see the fires. We know that the cities of the past are not going to be able to sustain us. In 2050, we will be the city planners, the healthcare workers, the community leaders shaping governance structures. And our kids, and potentially even some of our grandkids, will be the ones that are sitting in my place today, holding us accountable. Right now, we have a chance to imagine the cities of the future, where nature and architecture can coexist, where green spaces, forests, walkable streets, and bike lanes and circular waste practices are part of our urban fabrics, where buildings are powered by renewable energy and use materials that do not deplete our planet. Cities where public transport is clean, accessible, and now the most convenient way to go from point A to point B, where everyone has access to clean air, safe water, and affordable housing. What we need are adaptable cities that grow with the needs of its residents. To bring these visions to life, we need to reintroduce the radical imagination concept into the ways we act to design and to create better cities. Yes, changing our cities is going to be disruptive. Yes, changing our cities will require new forms of collaboration with local groups and removing political barriers to that collaboration. And yes, changing our cities will require stellar communication efforts, ensuring that residents are informed and empowered to live in this new era. Bringing these visions to life starts with an ambitious vision that we can look to our NDCs for as critical pillars to changing our cities. NDCs aren't just climate action plans. They are life-saving devices. They are the blueprints of our futures. And right now, with current NDCs, our world is on track to warm by almost 2.7 degrees. We are failing the Paris Agreement. 85% of the emissions contributing to this rapid warming have come from oil, coal, and gas. That has been happening since I was born for 3 decades, which encompasses my entire lifetime and that of my entire generation. Breaking our addiction to fossil fuels will not only occur through communication of more ambitious NDCs, but also action in every single corner of our communities, including in our cities. NDCs are the guiding star. Cities are parts of the implementation plan. Increasing action requires ensuring every single person has the capacity, the information, and the agency to act on climate change. Last year, the Global Stocktake called attention to the significant need for participatory NDCs that ensure awareness raising, education, and information sharing encompassed in the Action for Climate Empowerment agenda for long-term leadership and climate action are integral to NDCs. Yet, according to Care About Climate's NDC Equity Tracker, which compares 54 NDCs representative of 85% of global emissions, NDCs are critically deficient in their efforts to include women and young people as key decision makers and as agents of change. That's why Care About Climate has partnered with Groundswell and the We Are Family Foundation to launch the Universal NDC Youth Clause, which is a call to action for governments at the national and subnational levels to appreciate, collaborate with, and educate children and young people as drivers of climate action. By engaging in meaningful intergenerational collaboration, we can harness the diversity of perspectives needed to build efficient climate action, fostering the dynamic and resilient solutions that the climate crisis demands within our national governments, but also within our cities. Problems that transcend generational leadership also require generational collaboration. As we look to the future, I cannot stress enough to the importance of the power of imagination and intergenerational inclusive collaboration. Achieving a fair, fast, funded, feminist, and inclusive fossil fuel phase-out will require every single one of us. This is a call to action to support the innovators, the dreamers, the doers who are really out here creating the sustainable future that we all want to live in, and the resilient cities of the future that will have to withstand the impacts of climate change for decades to come. One that prioritizes people and nature over profits, our health over the pockets of industry that are continuing to poisoning our communities, and one where people and all of our diversity can live safe, happy, and with community-oriented love for each other and for the planet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelly. It was, I think we had a lot of food for thought in your presentation. And as we go in the Marrakech Partnership again, for the future, I think it's a lot to process and think about it. Seeing NDCs as a blueprint for the future, I think this is really the way to go, and how to inform the citizens is definitely something what we should really think about, what we can do under this framework. And with this excellent framing from Razan and Haley, it's really my pleasure to give floor to Diana Urfortzat, who is, as already mentioned, the Vice Chair of IPCC, and she's also working with Central European University. So Diana, it's floor for you for the keynote speech, please.
Thank you very much, Gulnara, and it's an absolute pleasure and honor to be here today and be able to share some of the thoughts with you, even though it's really a difficult task after such two stellar talks. Anyway, I hope my slides will be coming up. Until they are coming up. Today, I just want to share some thoughts on the IPCC process, as well as some of our findings. And okay, it's up to me. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that I have to make it happen. Okay, now here we go. So today I would like to talk about framing urban climate action within the IPCC framework. It's going to be a bit more boring than his fantastic two previous speeches. Nevertheless, let me give you just at least some teasers from previous science from the IPCC and towards our upcoming work in the fourth assessment reports. So there has been so much already said during this COP. So many people talk so eloquently about why cities matters, and I don't want to repeat a lot of that. But there are a few points that perhaps are less often mentioned, because the share of cities in population and global emissions is mentioned a lot. But do we often talk about that? Actually, cities generate over 80% of global GDP. That means they really amplify their influence on resilience and also on economic policies. Also, they are the center of agility, both innovation agility and governance agility, because they are usually the centers of innovation, and because so much happens in them due to this high share of GDP, they are also the centers where we expect more and more innovation, both in technology, business models, and also governance. Also community engagement, as I mentioned, innovation hubs, but also critical infrastructure. Local authorities manage essential systems, transport, water, waste, as already mentioned before, vital for urban resilience. But also cities are leading in climate mitigation action. Over 10,000 cities have set targets for emission reductions and sustainability worldwide, and over 800 cities have net zero emission pledges around mid-century. So, but let's first talk about perhaps the bad news, what the IPCC brought to you. This is a bit perhaps complex figure, but this shows is that beyond a certain heat and humidity combination, it's just too risky. There is a risk to mortality of individuals. And what this figure shows you, that at different temperature levels, which areas of the world will be exposed to such conditions, how many days a week. So the darker the color, the more days a week. And in fact, the really purple ones, it's all year round. Basically, you will have a high level of mortality. That translates into having 1.5 billion people being exposed to such risky conditions by 2050 in South Asia, and over 1 billion people in sub-Saharan Africa being exposed to such conditions. And whereas we can think that, okay, with good adaptation, perhaps we'll just provide air conditioning by then all of those people, unfortunately, that's really far from reality. Even, and I know this is also too complex graph, I'm not going to explain it, but it's just my excuse that I do have the scientific evidence, because it's a very strong statement. What I'm going to say is that scientific evidence shows, modeling shows, that even by the most optimistic economic scenarios, most of these residents are not only not going to have access to air conditioning, but will not even own a refrigerator. So that means that by 2050, we are going to have billions of people in cities, because most of these people are exposed to extreme heat in cities. Billions of people in cities in the areas who will be exposed to critical heat conditions. So that means providing thermal security, and that is not a term yet in the IPCC that I made that because I think it's no longer about thermal comfort. It's really about thermal security in low energy ways or no energy ways could be a matter of survival for the urban poor. But not only that, it is just making our cities much more just. And what are our options to do this with even lower, with minimal air conditioning? So first of all, we had an excellent session previously on green and blue infrastructure, nature-based solutions. So that's critical because they can help reducing urban heat islands, but also provide shading and many other ways how green and blue infrastructure help with mitigating heat in cities. But also just eliminating in general urban heat islands through mature trees, through reflective and high albedo urban surfaces, again, providing a lot of shading in public areas where humans are outdoors, preferably by methods avoiding local heating, because some of these actually increase local heating. Also, passive cooling techniques also help with shading insulated building surfaces, especially windows, passive ventilation techniques, looking at vernacular architecture, looking at local indigenous knowledge, how actually people have been surviving in higher heat conditions is really crucial. So, but there, even if we do all of this, there will be a residual thermal security gap, meaning some population will still be exposed to heat. So that means it will be critical to provide cool sanctuaries for overheated periods to make our cities more just and protect these vulnerable populations. And my slide is not forwarding, but I know it will. Yes. So this is just an illustration from the city of Budapest. On the left-hand side, you see the heat temperature map, and I know you can't see the temperatures, but actually there is 30 degrees centigrade difference in immediately neighboring neighborhoods where on these surface temperatures, and it really see on the right-hand side or the left-hand side, you see that this really correlates very strongly with the foliage intensity. Of course, that's not the case for every climate, but there are many climates where urban trees can make a very significant difference. So these were just the appetizers, why science matters so much and how we can help localizing NDCs and how we can inform subnational action. And for that, our next special report, IPCC special report, is going to be especially important and very applicable for you. This is the special report on cities and climate change. And in that report, which is going to come out in early 2027 and well before also the global stocktake, so hopefully it will be also very relevant for that process. We will talk about first why cities matter. Then we are going to focus on cities in a changing climate. So why, how are cities affected, and how also cities affect climate change. In the third chapter, we will talk about what solutions exist. So we will review all the different types of solutions, both technologies, also behavior, also governance approaches, finance. Definitely finance is critical. All of these solutions. And in chapter 4, we will look at how to facilitate and accelerate change. So how can we actually enable those solutions in chapter 3? And finally, in chapter 5, we will recognize that cities are no one size fits solution fits all. They are very different cities by climate, by culture, by demography, by level of economic development, by simply the level of urbanization, and so on. So we will break down these complex solutions by the different city types and regions. So hopefully we are going to be able to have a lot of you inform that process. So here is, I know this is again a complex slide, I won't go all of that, just show this is the very long process that IPCC has in order to get a report out. There are many points at which you will be able to inform this. We are currently selecting the authors for this report, and I'm sure many of you have already nominations in there, and hopefully many of you will have colleagues or in your communities or from your country authors selected. So you can definitely always have have meetings with those authors and tell them what is really important for you from this report, what do you expect as an outcomes, and what best practices can you share, because we will base this report on a lot of best practices and case studies. But also where it's very important, and I'm just going to see if I can, I can point, excellent. These two, the review drafts, we really need all your attention and all your inputs as reviewers. Our reports are only as robust as our review comments, and we have usually over 10,000 review comments on each of our reports. Each of these are very rigorously being taken into account and have to report how they address. We really need your views on are we really speaking to you? Are your issues addressed? Can we be really relevant to you? And finally, once we will be ready, we really hope to cooperate with you so that this report gets to all your constituencies, all your stakeholders, your decision makers, all the subnational collaborators, so that we can better inform the implementation of NDCs, and so hopefully we will be able to cooperate on many counts with you. And here is the outline, but that's also available on the IPCC website. Just please put into your calendars, especially the review periods, where we really please put it on already these into your calendars, so that we can count on so that you can block your time and count on your feedback. And I would like to thank very much for your attention, and we hope to be collaborating with you throughout this report and afterwards in making it happen. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Diana. I think this is really call for action for all of us. I think many of us, many different organizations work on different practical projects. So I think it will be really great framing. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Razan. Thank you, Diana, Haley. So it is my pleasure, after this really very inspirational framing of the discussion, we would like to go to the first panel, which has named Multi-Level Action for Investable and Inclusive NDCs in Building Construction Sector. And it is my pleasure to give floor for moderation over to Dr. Jörg Linke. You're welcome. You are Head of Competence Center Climate Change at GIZ in Germany. Please.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. And thank you very much, Professor Diana Oeger for these inspiring words. It's important to align with science and to translate science into action. I'm very curious to read the report when it will be ready. It is a pleasure to moderate this session on multi-level action for investable and inclusive NDCs in buildings and construction sector. My name is Jörg Linke. I'm the head of Competence Center of Climate Change of the German Agency for International Cooperation, the GIZ. GIZ is supporting subnational action through several projects in Global South, fostering low carbon, resilient cities and a just future. We are also very active in the building sector. For example, maybe some of you know the Partnership for Energy Efficiency in Buildings, the PEEP. And we are a proud member of the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction. My colleague, I don't know if you know her, Carmen Vogt, is head of GIZ Cities Group, is also passionate to co-lead of the GlobalABC Subnational Action Group. Today, the NDC policy brief for the building sector developed by UNEP in support with GIZ was launched at the high-level roundtable in green construction energy efficiency in buildings and climate resilience. The policy brief clearly emphasizes that national determined contributions, the NDCs, are an opportunity to accelerate climate action globally and especially in the built environment. During the first Buildings and Climate Global Forum in Paris in March, local and subnational government leaders highlighted the importance of involving national governments and stakeholders in the development and implementation of NDCs to enhance their effectiveness. the inclusion in national roadmaps towards zero carbon and resilient buildings can lead to faster and more significant impacts in the critical sectors. And with that, I would like to open the floor for the amazing panel. First, I would like to invite Mrs. Rebecca Ochong. Mrs. Rebecca Ochong, wherever you want, close to me, please. Mrs. Ochong is Associate Director for Global Affairs and Advocacy at Habitat for Human International. Welcome, Mrs. Ochong. Then I would like to invite Mrs. Nasra Nanda. Have a seat, please. Mrs. Nasra Sanda is CEO of Kenya Green Building Society in Kenya. And last but not least, I would like to invite Mr. Narimam Topchi-Bachev. I learned a lot about his name already. CEO of PMD Projects LLC in Azerbaijan. And let me start with the first question. I would like to invite you to elaborate the question as far as possible within more or less 4 minutes, if possible. So, Mrs. Rebecca Ochong, when we address the subnational level, we also have to keep in mind informal settlements. So the question is, how can we respond to the needs of people living in informal settlements and engage them in the development and implementation of NDC processes?
Thank you very much. That's a very important question, and it's very critical, really. We had already from Her Excellency Razan how important addressing issues in informal settlements are, and also just raising how this is quite a big challenge. Now, we know that informal settlements are home to some of the most vulnerable populations to climate change, and yet they are often overlooked in both national and subnational planning. And it's something that we see all the time. Now, within Habitat for Humanity, we launched a global advocacy campaign in May last year called Home Equals. And the campaign focuses on increasing equitable access to housing for residents of informal settlements. As part of the campaign, a huge focus of the campaign is empowered participation, in where we are promoting the meaningful engagement of people within informal settlements. How are they being involved in the processes that affect them, the development that affects them? Because they are the ones who live there. They know their issues best. They know what their challenges are. But if we are not including them in any of these processes, then how do we address their problems? At the same time, one of the other key thematic focus of the campaign is climate resilience. We know that informal settlements are often located in the most disaster-prone areas. So how are we addressing, building their own resilience? So in my view, to address their needs effectively and equitably, for example, within NDC processes, I think we must focus on 3 key areas. And the first one I would say is inclusion. Secondly, integration and investment. And I'll elaborate what I mean by those 3. When we talk about inclusion, we have to ensure that informal settlement residents have a voice. For example, as countries work on the NDCs, how are we engaging residents of informal settlements in NDCs if we really want to address the issues? Are we creating platforms for meaningfully engaging them? Are we having formalized processes to ensure that we are, they are being engaged? So that we ensure that their needs and concerns are included in these important climate strategies. Secondly, integration. What we see in our work across different parts of the world, Habitat is in about 70 countries. We find that informal settlements and housing in general is often overlooked, despite its critical significance in climate action, both from adaptation or mitigation point of view. Our homes are where we experience the climate impacts more directly, whether through extreme weather, whether it's flooding or the heat and so on. And yet, it's never really been prioritized within climate strategies. We at Habitat for Humanity recently did an analysis of 194 NDCs to look at housing and informal settlement content. It was very sad reality when we realized that only 21% of these NDCs integrate housing in a meaningful way. And about only 8% of the NDCs include informal settlements. So and that's why here at COP, we are advocating for better integration of these issues in NDCs and are calling for governments to, as they review the new NDCs, they integrate housing and prioritize in informal settlement integration so that we can address issues like energy efficiency, disaster preparedness, and emission reductions. And then finally, of course, I talked about investment. How are we investing in upgrading of these settlements so that we can address the infrastructure, so that we can better be able to address issues that they experience every day. One of the things we've realized from our campaign, the global advocacy campaign that Habitat is implementing, we did a research in collaboration with IIED about a year ago to look at what are the benefits that would happen when we upgrade informal settlements at a substantial scale. And the results were really astounding even for us, but I think a positive thing. It showed that if we upgrade informal settlements at large scale, the GDP of certain countries can go up by up to 10.5%. Over 700,000 lives could be saved. About 2.4 years of life could be increased in terms of life expectancy, and enrollment of children could go up by about an additional almost 42 million. So we see that housing, it's not just the four walls. It has big, huge implications for our health, for the economy, for education, and of course for climate action. So it's really, really important that we address those issues, and let us all work to ensure that we are integrating housing and informal settlements in our climate strategies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ochong. If I interpret this correctly, or let me phrase it like this, if you understand just transition contributing to two main pillars, one is climate impact and the other hand is the just dimension. I think what you are doing is really contributing on both sides, and most especially the just dimension is covered by all of your activities in a very, very good way. So thank you very much for your contribution. The next question I would like to raise to Nasra Nanda. Nasra Nanda, when we discuss the construction and the built environment, waste and circularity are very important aspects. How can we integrate these topics to effectively tackle the challenges at the local level?
Thank you for this important question, and good afternoon, everyone. I think today I have the privilege and also the immense responsibility to articulate something at a regional level, a national level, and a subnational level. Regionally, as the chair for Africa region at the World Green Building Council, I have the voices of Africa articulating a uniquely African or global South issue. At a national level with Kenya, buildings and climate is now a primary focus for the global South. And at a subnational level, as an MCA in Nairobi County, I innately understand the problem that we have in cities, especially in the global South. For example, in Nairobi, 60% of the population resides in informal settlements. So when we think about circularity and waste as important aspects of construction, I think that's a very limited way of us framing this issue in the global South. The built environment for the global South is really a platform and an ecosystem that can help communities thrive and restore dignity. It can also have businesses unlock prosperity and governments deliver legacy. And so in reframing this, what we see is really an opportunity to understand that for waste and circularity, what it is an opportunity to unlock the dignity of people, particularly in informal settlements. And so waste management is really about restoring the health and sanitation of these communities. When it comes to circularity, it is actually saying that we are saving you the costs of throwing away what is already very limited in your spaces and teaching you that it is okay to reuse, recycle, so that these costs go down. And ultimately, what that introduces is the narrative of affordability. We are taking care of what is already limited. And so in reframing this, then we can unlock conversations that lead to action. Because what we're saying here is we value you as a community. And the three things that materialize out of this narrative is that adopting this take, make and dispose model into one that emphasizes sustainability for communities who can already find themselves struggling to maintain standards is really about championing their cause and government being an enabler of that cause and businesses unlocking opportunities for that. Second, we also then unlock opportunities to invest in localized waste management solutions in a way that makes sense to these communities. And third, how can we then bring government to understand that we need an enabling framework at the local level, with governors or mayors being champions of that initiative? And then lastly, once we understand that, is highlighting that public awareness. So if we have the context and the players, the future is ours to take. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What I liked very much is, on my opinion, it's a kind of redefinition of the word waste. It's not no longer throwing it away, but as well putting it into a circularity, even integrating the business factor and the co-benefits in the health sector, for example. So thank you very much for this explanation. So my third question goes to Narim Topchibachev. The NDCs can only be investable with support of the private sector. Your company focuses on lowering emissions and resource efficiency. So my question is, how can the industry contribute best, and what conditions must be given, for example, government structures? What do you need from non-governmental stakeholders?
Thank you very much. I am also honored to participate in this event. Hi all, Assalamu alaikum, good afternoon. It's a very good question to ask. We actually hearing the previous panel and now the panelists, there's talks and conversation coming really global, and the scale is much bigger than what we do here in Azerbaijan. We just recently started going towards sustainable actions, understanding what actually NDC is, what is ESG, what is sustainability. And then suddenly we got COP29. So, and now we are all in the middle of a big global agenda. And we as a private sector also struggling, trying to keep up. And now hearing what you are saying about really continental values or very big scales. Now I'm afraid to say like, oh, we actually very little players. We try actually to teach people by bringing acknowledgement. Like we have around 35 projects in construction, and we're slowly moving towards sustainability by bringing really small things. Like we applied ISO certification for energy saving. We're pushing the contractors to go towards this. We control the transportation. We control waste management. We push contractors to walk through this and try to teach them this is required and you have to do this. As a PMD projects, we initiated several initiatives. One of them is Built Environment Pledge. Thanks to Alida, she helps us a lot, and our high-level champion, Ms. Tingar Arfadaray, they helped us. They give us some direction, and we, together with real estate developers, we signed the pledge going towards net zero. So we kind of trying to achieve some results. We issued several white papers and position papers. Now we have National Bank of Azerbaijan issuing the taxonomy paper. Now it's going to be there's a 9.5 paragraph. It's about construction, that if you don't apply or certificate your developments for LEED certification, BREEAM certification, you'll be obliged to pay some bills and taxes. So it's slowly we're trying to make people responsible for sustainability and greener future. And I hope this trend will bring the private sector towards investing money in our future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have the impression it's real pioneer work what you're doing here, and I love your motivation behind that. Thank you very much. So I think we are through. I don't know if we are running out of time or we are okay. So maybe to round up, let me raise one question to you, and I would love you to answer with one sentence to round it up. And so the question would be, if you had one wish, which obstacle to successful implementation of NDCs in the building and construction sector at national, subnational level would you like to remove overnight, and why? Very, very briefly. Would you like to start, Mr. Tong?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think for me, I would like to remove the lack of climate resilient housing and infrastructure at subnational level.
Wonderful. Thank you.
For me, I would want to remove the technical jargon and have a list of to-dos that we need to achieve so that we can unlock the financing. I think that's it.
Thank you very much. And Mr.?
I would like to not remove, but bring the people's responsibility and that they understand this as an obligation as they brush the teeth in the morning, so they come to work and deal with sustainability in the first place rather than other things.
Thank you very much. And with that, we are closing, and I'm sure we are going to monitor your wishes in the next year, in the next COP in Belém. So thank you very much for your for your contributions, and I will hand over to whom? To the next panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a wonderful, insightful panel, Dr. Linka. I would like to call up, without further ado, here to come and join me, please, because we're all part of one big family here. We feel very much at home here in the Marrakech Partnership Hall. Firstly, my colleague Dominique Abimana, who's the incoming new Secretary General of the Rwanda Environmental Management Authority, RALGA. If you please have a seat there. Dominique, I'm going to come and sit next to you. And then Gregor Robertson, we're very pleased to have you as a special envoy for cities in CHAMP and GCOM ambassador, and of course, ex-mayor of Vancouver, Canada. And Helen, please come and join me. Helen Opel, Cities, Climate and Engagement Lead of WRI Africa. Helen, it's an honor always to be on a panel with you, and wonderful collaboration that we have with WRI in this space. So if you don't mind, I'm going to come and sit down here with my friend Dominique. And just very quickly say that it's an honor for ICLEI to be here today with all of you. We work with so many of you with so many different hats on. I see many friends in the audience here today. And I'd like to give this speaking opportunity to our fantastic panel here. So I'll just say that we sit here at the cusp. We now spoke about multi-level action. Let's talk about local action. And what does that mean in the context of this discussion today? So without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to our fantastic incoming Secretary General, Dominique, from RALGA. We know in many ways Rwanda is a leading country, not only because they were the first country in Africa to ban plastics coming into the country. I remember my plastic bag being taken off the first time I came to Kigali. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. Why can't my country do it too? So we've learned many valuable lessons over the time from Rwanda. And I think, Dominique, you know, from our perspective, maybe, I'd like to thank you and congratulate you in your new position and for your leadership and providing your voice to the advancements that we see on multi-level governance and engagement in Rwanda. So thank you for sharing your thoughts with us on this topic today. It's an honor to have you here with us.
Thank you very much. I feel very honored and thank you. So, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a big pleasure to be here and be able to share the experience of Rwanda on local action for climate action. First of all, climate change is a real threat to our country. Every year, it costs us 5 to 7% of our GDP. So we cannot stand and watch. We had to take action as a country. And this is why climate action is reflected in all our national policies, in the national development strategy overall. So we placed climate resiliency at the center because we know without doing that, it's actually the whole country and society that will not be able to reach our ambitions. So we put high ambitions for NDC, and now that we are revising the NDCs, we aim even to raise even more the level of ambition. So to go beyond the 38% baseline for greenhouse gas reduction that we put. So this commitment is real, but coming to the topic of today at the local level, it's important, first of all, that we have the structures right. This is what we've learned, to make sure that we have the policies that provide actually for the roles at different levels, that we have the institutional setup well aligned, and that the monitoring and evaluation that is also reflective of the different levels. So harmonization of the strategies and the plans is important. And now that we are developing the NDC 3.0, it's a very good opportunity for Rwanda also because it comes at the time that we also finalizing our country national strategy for transformation, secondary generation, but also the districts, the local government development plans. So this means it's an opportunity actually to harmonize also the targets and clarify the actions at every level. So in the process of developing the NDC, we are closely working the central level and the local level, and thanks to the support of the World Resource Institute through CHAMP and our partners to make sure that the local level participates right from the design, from the setting of the targets, and from the design, the thinking about the pathways through which these targets will be achieved. That's the first level. If we don't get it right, then it will be difficult actually to have the local level participate. Yet we know they are at the forefront in every field. So maybe to just sum up my points, I would say that we noticed that there are 3 to 4 needs actually if you are to have the local level take part effectively. One is to make sure that we bring the capacities to the local level, the technical capacities. They need to understand what you're talking about. They need to have the skills to develop climate response, the projects, to make sure that they are really aligned and responsive to the issues they face in their locality. And here remembering that the needs of one area may not be necessarily the needs of another. So to have the tailored capacity development for each and every level. Second is to make sure that we also ease access to finance to the local levels. We are happy in Rwanda that the Rwanda Green Fund has now started to actually provide finance also to the districts, to the local level, and this has proven to be working. And we count actually to put even more emphasis on this and supporting also district to be able to access the funds. But here it's also a call to the different instruments used to provide funding to the local levels to make sure that they are eased, that the funding frameworks and instruments are actually friendly, and that they include only the needed requirements, because the local level might not be able also to respond to the requirements if too complicated. And lastly, the research to make sure that we embed the data collection, research, and learning in the work that we do with local governments. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dominique. And of course, working with the World Resources Institute on this, working with ICLEI, UCLG, C40, so many of our networks, we are all in it with you. And many of your cities are also part of the GCOM initiative. So let me turn with this, thank you for your comments. Let me turn with this to Gregor. Gregor, since Dubai, the COP28 presidency's Coalition on High Ambition Multilevel Partnership for Climate Action, or CHAMP, as we all dearly know it, has achieved several achievements and on enhancing coordination, strengthening commitment, and implementing effective climate strategies across various levels of government. We would now like to hear from you, Gregor, about why CHAMP is indeed such a critical game changer in this space, in these halls, in these corridors of the COP for multi-level governance, and also maybe share a little bit of your perspective about what is the future, what excites you most about the future of CHAMP. Thank you.
Sure, thanks, Kobe. Good to see everyone here. So I would say CHAMP is a game changer. A few things are new and different. There have been many attempts in the past to organize multi-level governance. We've talked about it since I've been involved in city politics, about 20 years. And I think we've got an enormous opportunity that's emerged since COP28 in Dubai, and the UAE and Mike Bloomberg and his team helped launch this. But right away, we saw at the COP last year, 72 countries signed on, which I think surprised all of us at the local and regional level. So that momentum has not existed before among the countries, among the parties that are convened here at COP. So we've got countries focused on a commitment to their NDCs, their national adaptation plans, their NBSAPs, their biodiversity strategies, who are saying we will work with subnationals, cities, states, regions, which has not been a commitment made by 72, now 74 countries. Finland and UK joined in the last couple months. And we're very hopeful that there will be more. The momentum continues to build. So that momentum, as we all know, whether it's in politics, whether it's in social movements or environmental movements, momentum matters. And there is a buzz to CHAMP. And I think that buzz really comes from the critical role that we know local governments play. And I'd say local and regional governments, depending on how they're organized in different countries. Most of the local electeds and their councils have been farther ahead than their countries. And that's been driven by absolute necessity. I think whether it's in Rwanda, whether it's in Canada and Vancouver, the impacts of climate and the opportunities to create jobs and transform and improve our communities. Those are the drivers at a local level. And so we've seen countless mayors and councils drive forward with great support from networks like ICLE, Global Covenant of Mayors, C40, UCLG, with great support from academia and from WRI and many of the groups that work to support with research. So there's this incredible movement that's happened, grassroots basically, from local government, and created climate plans, created change on the ground. That's been supported in turn by the business community, the entrepreneurs and innovators. We're seeing breakthrough technologies across the board that are more efficient, that are healthier, that are much lighter on our footprint on our planet. So we've got this combination of forces that's coming out of that drive at a local and entrepreneurial level. It hasn't historically been connected very well with national governments. National governments have lots on their plate to take care of. But this linkage has not been strong. And I think what's different now is we're recognizing that linkage can deliver much more significant opportunity, and we can make a difference in stopping this climate crisis in its tracks. That's a huge task for us. The latest research that we have, and Arup did this work with us at GCOM, 40% of that emissions reduction gap to be on track for 1.5 can come from cities. So almost half of the reduction that we need can be delivered. And that's with the plans that we have in place, the capacity that we have in place. If we finance that, to speak to Dominique's real issue there, if we have the financing available, we have projects on the ground, and I think we have an extraordinary team of people collectively around the world who can support up-leveling, getting projects into pipelines, getting financing in place. It just feels like we've needed a catalyst to accelerate this work, and CHAMP is that catalyst now. But it means we keep at it, and we have to connect those dots from the plans, the national level, to the financing, and turn it into projects on the ground.
Thank you, Gregor. I think, very well said as our special envoy for CHAMP, and, for you as a very successful mayor of Vancouver for many terms, several terms, you understand that all of this is such common sense to cities. Us working at the local level, it just comes naturally. But yet we need you. We need you as our champion around the world. And I wish you, to make the point to national governments, remind them of this. Common sense to us, common sense to the world, but we need to be reminded at all levels of government how very important the role of local and subnational governments is, and that 40% gap. We need to actually fill that, and cities are best placed to fill it, best placed in the whole world to fill it at the speed and at the scale that's needed now. So I want to thank you on behalf of ICLE and our whole Marrakech Partnership family here for your stalwart and determined advocacy on the multi-level governance agenda. Thank you. I'm now pleased to introduce our close friend, Helen, to you, who leads up our climate and engagement work at WRI, the World Resources Institute for Africa, to speak on WRI's recently launched working paper entitled Stronger NDCs with Cities, States and Regions, Recommendations for National Governments. Again, reminding them of why cities and regions are so important. Helen, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kobe. And I think we've just had the 40% gap, but part of what this paper begins to recognize is the fact that of the NDCs, out of 194 that were reviewed, only 27% have strong urban content. Only 40% identify climate hazards at the urban level when you compare this with 89% that are looking at the hazards at national level. So I think we still have a long way to go, I think, in terms of framing the thing. But acknowledging then as he said, national governments have a lot on their plate. And so the aim of this is beginning to empower the national governments, with practices that can allow them to meaningfully collaborate, and also how they can integrate this subnational content into their NDCs. And so there are 3 stages. The first, I think, is just to do a review. And it's very important before we plan, the national government's plan, they need to review. What's the status of the multi-level partnerships that already exist within the framework? How meaningful are they? What's the level of subnational content within the NDCs now? What is the potential contribution of subnational governments to be able to support the national government to meet its national climate goals? And only after national governments, together with the subnational governments, do this, then should they move to the second stage, which is the planning stage. And this stage really requires that the guide talks about ensuring that there's a collective vision. So one that is owned both by the national government, the subnational government, and by other partners. And the benefit really of this is that it inspires greater confidence, even for the national government itself, to know that they will be able to meet their climate targets, but it also gives credibility to the NDC itself. Then the next piece is to ensure that as we develop the NDC itself, ensure that it integrates and not just sugarcoats, subnational considerations. What does subnational considerations mean? It is subnational data, subnational trends, subnational targets, subnational risks, subnational policies, subnational actions. So ensuring that then all of this is considered, included in the NDCs. And I think that's we hope that this paper, and I brought so many of them for anyone that would be interested in having a copy, will be something that will guide our nations together with our cities as we work together to integrate subnational content in the NDCs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. And I'm going to take the liberty here of asking that you hold up that paper when we finish here and that the 4 of us stand and celebrate this with you. Fantastic work done by WRI, very important. We'll take it up into our work with our cities, all of us will. Now I'd like to ask the UN Chief Heat Officer to come up and prepare your panel. But before we go, we're going to take a quick family picture. And Lenio Miravilli, a UN Chief Heat Officer, as cooling champion to set the scene for our next panel. Very, very important panel. We know UNEP is leading the Cool Coalition, and we know that there's 72 countries already signed up to that coalition. Gulnara from UNEP, thank you very much for moderating all of us here today, and congratulations on the fantastic work you're doing. I want to also say that ICLEI is very pleased to be part of that coalition already, signed up earlier this year. So thank you very much also to Lenio. If you'll excuse us for one few 10 seconds to take a family picture, and then thank you very much to my panel.
Thank you very much, Kobe. So let me ask my panel to join me up here so we don't lose too much time. I would like to have Musa Miranda and Mr. Mobolaji Onimole, and Colin Stewart, please, to join us. Hello, welcome. So we are now going to the subnational level and trying to figure out different kind of collaborations, correlations, and multi-sectoral and multi-level action linked to cooling. And I'm very, very honored to be joined by our three guests. I would like to start with, I know I massacred your name, but I'm going to try to do it better this time. Mr. Mobolaji Onimole. So I would like to ask you, Mr. Mobolaji Onimole is the Director of Development Partnership at the Lagos State Ministry of Economic Planning and Budget. Lagos has been one of the states and one of the cities that have been really in the forefront of building resilience. And we are very eager to hear how you have taken into the budgetary concerns issues that have to do with cooling, and especially whether the cooling pledge, the global cooling pledge, has given a boost to any of these decisions, both in relation to NDCs and mitigation of CO2 emissions, but also in passive cooling, if you have any examples to give us.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here. Again, my name is Bolaji Onimole, so you can call me BJ in the event that you find it difficult to call my name.
Thank you.
With respect to the question you asked, Lagos State has been on the forefront of implementing initiatives around cooling, but I would like to give you kind of a perspective. About 2-3 years ago, we signed up onto the C40 networks, right? And beyond that, they've been assisting us with quite a number of studies. Right here with me, I have my Chief Resident Officer, Dr. Dania.
I know Dr. Dania, actually.
So you may want to wave to everybody.
And she's been doing amazing work in Lagos, I know,
Exactly.
for years.
So we've done quite a number of work together. So to be specific, with respect to cooling, we started with defining our governance structure. Today, we have an agency which we call the Lagos State Parking Agency, Park and Garden Agency. The approach is for us to take it up on a mitigation level rather than just reacting using the adaptive approach. So we have the park and gardens, using the garden for the preliminary cooling system. So we find out that most of the areas that either though were not green are currently becoming green. That is first. Then on the energy level, what Lagos State has done in the last 1 or 2 weeks, we have our Lagos electricity market passed into law as a policy. And why are we doing this? Today, Nigeria as a country has a maximum energy production capacity of 18,000 megawatts. 18,000 megawatts. And what does that mean? 18,000 megawatts for a population of over 200 million is abysmally low. And if you look at the KPI of developing countries, you find out that the more the energy availability, the increase in their ability for them to grow in terms of GDP. So Lagos not wanting to wait for the country, what did we do? We passed our electricity bill quickly. We are about to finalize the independent resource planning mechanism to assist us to incorporate green energy production into the state grid. That is second. Then what normally disturbs the investors has already been solved at the same time. And what does that mean? It is no longer in the exclusive list of the constitution of the country for energy generation, transmission, and distribution. Lagos and its investors that are ready to and willing to partner with us can generate their own electricity, can transmit it, and can also distribute it to any environment that they want within the state. Now, how does this lead to cooling? Today, Lagos consumes an average of 10 gigawatts. That is about 10,000 megawatts of energy. However, it's only 2.3 megawatts maxi that we got from the national grid. That tells a story. The story is about 7.7 gigawatts of power is being self-generated. So how are these things being generated? It is by what? Independent, what we call individual generators. And these impacts on the environment, especially with respect to production of carcinogenic materials, in addition of eating up the environment. So what Lagos State is trying to do, bring in investment, stop people from producing their own energy, such that the environment will revert to the status quo of being cooling rather than just being heated up by every household, trying to generate its own power. So these are investment opportunities. We are not looking at it as problems per se. We are seeing it as an opportunity for investors, for partners, for DFIs to come in, but with a proviso. And the proviso is you are only going to be accepted to operate in Lagos State if you're coming with solutions that are climate action supporting, that is resilient enough, that is green, and that will also assist us to be able to meet with the Paris Agreement that we signed up to. And just about 2-3 days ago, the State Executive Council member signed up onto the Cooling Pledge as a subnational, one of the first 17 to sign up onto it in the world. Thank you.
I know, congratulations and thank you for that. It's great how you bring together from your talking to us about the city of Lagos, the state of Lagos, the whole relationship both to the national level and to the private sector, which is a very big effort that the UNEP-led coalition for the Global Cooling Pledge has been trying to bring together. I want to remind that what you referred to, the Subnational Cooling Pledge, which is part of the Global Cooling Pledge, has 3 basic mandates for cities. One, to have a climate action plan, that a heat action plan, and it could stand alone or be part of the climate action plan or the resilience action plan, which I know that Lagos and Dr. Dania has been working on for a while now.
Absolutely.
And may I also say that Dr. Dania has also been part of the Resilient Cities Network and part of the steering committee, which is also another network together with C40 that has been really supporting Lagos. So one is to have an action plan. 2 is to make sure to bring more nature into the city, which you already mentioned. And 3 is to actually affect procurement and create sustainable cooling procurement for the public sector. So again, it's like bringing in the private sector and trying to figure out how to create these conditions is really, really, really great to hear.
Thank you.
So thank you. So without further ado, I go to the second speaker, who is Colin Stewart, Senior Vice President. Senior Vice President for the Business Development of International and Oversight for Tabrid. And Tabrid is a leader in district cooling and in cooling in general. So I would like you to try to tell us a little bit about how the Global Cooling Pledge has boosted, hopefully, the work and has led forward your interactions with different levels of government.
Thank you. So for sure, we have a big boost to the understanding and the need for cooling. So in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, we continue to push for district cooling and be received for district cooling in a good way. We started long before cooling pledges, actually. So we've been doing cooling for more than a quarter of a century. I hope everybody's familiar with district cooling, but basically it's large-scale cooling. So rather than having individual cooling units in each different building, we put a central cooling plant and then a network that supplies cold water to the buildings around that, and we supply then chilled water to a whole community that allows them to cool their own buildings. And by doing that, we save in many different ways, but essentially we save 50%, up to 50% of energy use, of electricity use. And that means 50% of CO2 reduction as well. So just a quick explanation of district cooling. Abu Dhabi and Dubai, I think, are quite mature in terms of the understanding of what we do. So it's not so difficult. It's been a good ride. We welcome the cooling pledge because it's now helping. It's confirming what we've been doing already. So that's important. Tabrid, as a private company, is looking now to to expand outside of its comfort zone and do cooling in other parts of the world. So this is where it will really help. And I think there we have some great help. Again, Abu Dhabi and Dubai have good regulations, have good understanding of what needs to be done, how to give the right level of service to our customers, how to spend the right level of capex, how not to oversize, but to have the right capacity in the first place. So all of these things mean that we can provide a very efficient system. Those regulations don't exist in many other parts of the world, and this is really critical. I'm having meetings in countries in Southeast Asia at the moment, and it's a learning experience actually. These guys need to learn how to develop regulations linked with energy supply, so that we can at least make our presence valuable in these countries. We bring the finance, so it's not a question of asking for funds. Okay, we would like to have an understanding of the tax regimes and how these work in different countries, but we will fund what we do, but it has to be in a clear structure. So this is my plea really. If we can have clear structures from cities where we want to help and want to be present, then it makes our life at least achievable.
Do you mean regulatory structures?
So regulatory, yeah, exactly. Regulatory structures and how we work with the energy suppliers, for example, where we get our energy from. In the UAE, again, we're able now to rely on a grid that's becoming less and less carbon intensive. And if we can bring in renewable energy into our projects in other parts of the world, this makes them even more attractive. So there's lots of ways we can work together with the energy providers and the urban, the municipal governments to make cooling even more attractive, to make our kind of cooling even more attractive than it is today.
Great. We'll come back to this. And before we come back to it, I would like to go to my final interlocutor, Musa Miranda, who is the Director of Innovation and Entrepreneurship in Sao Paulo at the Development Agency. So Musa, tell us a little bit about what exactly you do and what exactly you do and how do you support the entrepreneurship and different type of businesses that you are supporting at the time.
Okay, first, it's an honor to be here, and I think I will talk a little bit about São Paulo. São Paulo, it's a home of over 12 million people that making the largest and most vibrant cities in the world. So, like many cities, we have fast growth and urbanization that increase emissions of green gases and carbon dioxide, and it's a major concern. We also see this challenge as an opportunity to transform the city and show the world that it's possible to build a more sustainable future. So in São Paulo, we are really committed with the reducing of carbon emissions. And I work at a public agents that are linked with City Hall. And we focus to promote entrepreneurship in the city of São Paulo. And one of our programs is to support solutions like startups with green technologies. So we foster these startups. We choose 25 startups per year, and we foster them with 45,000 reais, and we stay then with 6 months mentoring, supporting, doing workshops, and we're looking for sustainable solutions that is like with clean energy solutions for clean water, solid waste management, and all of these solutions that we think that helps reducing and the carbon related emissions. So this is how the city it's working with like public and privates to collaborate to call in.
That's great. You have in Sao Paulo, you've had to deal with extreme heat. So I would like to ask if you have any specific solutions which bring together the public sector and the private sector, or just from the private sector that deal specifically with cooling.
So actually, we have some of solutions, but one that we is still like helping. It's a startup that they have caravels that clean. They have a technology that clean the gases in the water and clean the water. And now they was with us in the Green Sampa, and now they start to put this caravel in our rivers to start to clean the water and like reduce the emissions gas like that was in the water. And we have AI technologies that sensors that see how the air are you can provide the air and where are more pollution and where are spaces that is like low pollution that we can like feel and make and can provide us some data that makes us as a public sector think about solutions in that specific area that has, I don't know, maybe more cars or more pollution for some factory fabrics. So we have a lot of technology and solutions around these cases.
Thank you very much. I will go again to Lagos and my first speaker to tell us a little bit more about what were the greatest difficulties that you had to deal with when you kind of started bringing in this whole kind of effort for cooling, and what do you expect, or rather, what do you expect to be the biggest challenges in these three subnational commitments that you have made? What do you think might be most difficult for you guys to engage in, and why?
I will rather look at it from what was the most difficult, and that had to do with the fact that we have to always lean back to the federal government, that is the central government, before we could make any move in terms of getting things done, move in terms of oxygenating our initiatives and the like. But today, like I said earlier, the policy has been dropped in such a manner that it's no longer in the exclusive list of the federal government. Is now concurrent. So every state can move at their own pace, irrespective of who is moving with you or not. That is one. Then secondly, the capacity to be able to deliver our own thoughts. We scare ourselves, we dream big. So we dream bigger than our capacity. So what we need at the moment is the right type of partnership. And that's why we tell anyone who cares to listen to Lagos State, if Lagos State is not supported at this infancy, you may likely have to be spending billions in future to solve the problem that will be needing fewer millions to attack at the infant stage. So the challenges are just not many, but it revolves around the capacity for us to be able to deliver on some of these initiatives, which you're already assisting us with. Then secondly, the need for us to develop the capacity, the human capacity for sustainability is not just adequate, because the space we're dealing with, the error that most thought leaders like our good selves here present do make is to focus more on the capex part of the solution. So when you focus more on the capex part of the solution, fine, you've provided the infrastructure. Who maintains it? Who ensures the sustainability? So we also need to start thinking deep about the operational expenses that will ensure the continuity, the scalability, and to assure the future generation that indeed, at this level, by the time they are in COP 55, 56, those of us in COP 29 did do a lot of forward-thinking type of bringing forward type of forward-thinking solutions instead of just remaining at the pace that we are.
This is so important. What you just mentioned is really, really important. And we have this kind of problem often because our mayors and our elected representatives often have like shorter spans than the kind of solutions that we need them to implement, to design and implement. So this is constantly an issue because they usually think of in short term. When we want them, it's very few leaders that actually manage to think and implement and design solutions that are really long term and forward thinking. So that's really, really a challenge that I think we see generally, and we have to kind of figure how to cope with it all the time. With the going back to the district cooling thing, we have recently from the International Energy Agency this report that has mentioned that AI and basically cooling are going to be the two most intensive sectors that are going to be pushing energy demand to extremes in the next decades and throwing us off our mitigation globally away from our mitigation goals. And I was wondering, Tabrid and the private sector, how are you thinking of this and how are you kind of positioning yourself in relation to that?
So first, I just want to just come back on something you said, which is really good. This planning in advance and getting the plans right is super critical. So I think that's great that you're thinking like that, yes, because we really need to plan in advance so you can build your systems to match what's going to grow. So that's I just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
So I was just told that we have 1 minute. So please, if you could kind of close our session with a quick kind of answer to that.
So yes, the growing just on the data centers, the AI, all this new demand. We haven't really invested heavily in it just yet, but it's certainly something we're going to consider. We need to be there. We talked to some. Sometimes these data centers are very critical, so they like to do it themselves, and we have a big challenge to persuade them that actually we're very good at this already. We've got good reliability. But if we can do that, I think we can find a way to work with them.
Great. And with cooling?
With cooling, well, we carry on as we are. We're going to cooling the electricity consumption in the UAE. 70% goes to cooling already. So I think we're already there. We're ready to provide. Our job is to reduce that consumption. It's to take that 70% down to something else, right. And that's what we're doing. I think that's what Tabrid and our competitors, which we have, are all about.
Fantastic. That's good to hear. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you. And
Thank you.
I don't know if we should also do a quick photo, maybe with everybody that is still here. Tanya talked about all the time. So much. Please join us up. I hope that's okay. Are we okay?
And thank you so much to everybody for the attention. And so we can continue the discussion.
Okay. Yes.